What's going on? Hope you're all doing well. Thursday. So, got a quiz tomorrow. Hopefully, study guides will come in today. Act 1 Google form due tomorrow. Hopefully, you're done with that since we pretty much read what you could get to yesterday. We'll find out exactly what happens today, but they were obviously spooked because there was a noise downstairs. And I don't know about you, but when I first heard about Anne Frank or something, I think I was pretty young, maybe in elementary school, but I thought, oh, that would be interesting. Like that would be kind of fun to have to hide for a short period of time. But then you quickly realize like their lives depended on it. That's where the fun gets sucked out of it because you know that of the 8 people that are hiding now, like all but one is going to die, which is just so tragic and all that hiding for nothing. So they're going to get a bit of a scare today, and luckily, Mr. Frank is like, all right, I'm going to go check it out. This is Saturday. We can't live like this for another probably like 36 hours, I guess, until Meep might come on Monday morning. So he's going to go down and check. And one of the last things we read was like Peter was like, "Hey, I'll go help out." So even though he's only 16, we learned he's starting to get a little bit of a mustache, and it's so thin. I mean, I don't know. We didn't talk about it yesterday, but the mustache is so thin that like a cat could lick it off. Because I think it was a Dussel that says that. Like, I'll just put some milk on it; it'll get rid of it. So kind of funny, Dussel. They had a little bit of a, but he'll go back to his cranky self soon. All right, so I think we're going to finish Act 1 today, and then we'll get into a little Act 2. And you know what that means. Next week, another Google form. There's actually next week we'll be talking about some other things also kind of get you ready for high school a little bit more. Not like exactly grammatical stuff, but a little bit more nuts and bolts of English. So let me make this big, make me small, and let's start reading. So Anne's dad's down there, and she's like, somebody go after father. Make father come back. Peter, I'll go. So his dad's like, haven't you done enough? Remember, he's got the cat thing. So he pushes Peter roughly away. In his anger against his father, Peter grabs a chair as if to hit him with it. Whoa, it's getting violent now. Then he puts it down, burying his face in his hands. Mrs. Frank begins to pray softly. Please, please, Mr. Van Dam, get father. Quiet, quiet. So I don't know. He must be scared. He doesn't even want to go down there. Anne is shocked into silence. Mrs. Frank pulls her closer, holding her protectively in her arms. So I think Mrs. Frank is a pretty good mom. I mean, she's trying to protect her daughter. Hey, but that might be the problem. Remember, at times, and this can happen with parents, you're 13, Anne's 13, right? She doesn't need that much protection. Sometimes she wants it, though, when she has a nightmare here. But so maybe the mom, that's tough with parents and kids, like that whole, like, kind of pushing them away because you need to get your independence. All right, back to the reading. We got lots of reading to do. All right, so Mrs. Frank is praying. I won't read all that. It's just a prayer. And Mr. Frank is coming back up now. It was a thief. That noise must have scared him away. Thank God. He took the cash box and the radio. He ran away in such a hurry that he didn't stop to shut the street door. It was swinging open. I think it would be good to have some light. You sure it's all right? Danger's past. Margot goes to light the small lamp. So don't be terrified, Anne. We're safe. Who says the danger is past? Listen, this guy doesn't get it, right? Like the dad, hey, maybe the danger hasn't passed. He's just trying to make Anne feel safe so she doesn't have any more nightmares. Dussel, who says the danger is past? Don't you realize we're in greater danger than ever? Dude, you're not really helping. Mr. Dussel, will you be still? Mr. Frank takes Anne back to the table, making her sit down with him, trying to calm her. Dussel, pointing to Peter, thanks to this clumsy fool, there's someone now who knows we're up here. Someone now knows we're here, up here hiding. Mrs. Van Dam, someone knows we're here, yes, but who is the someone? A thief? A thief? You think a thief is going to go to the police and say, I was robbing a place the other night and I heard a noise up over my head. You think a thief is going to do that? Yes, I think he will. You're crazy. She stumbles back to her seat at the table. Peter follows protectively, pushing Dussel aside. So things are getting a little heated here, a little physical. I think someday he'll be caught, and then he'll make a bargain with the Green Police. If they'll let him off, he'll tell them where some Jews are hiding. He goes off into the bedroom. There's a second of appalled silence. He's right. Father, let's get out of here. We can't stay here now. Let's go. Go where? Yes, where? So it seems Mrs. Frank is definitely not keeping up the same. I think Mr. Frank's trying to make everybody feel all right, and Mrs. Frank is not on board with that. Have we lost all faith, all courage? A moment ago, we thought that they'd come for us. We were sure it was the end, but it wasn't the end. We're live, safe. Mr. Van Daan goes to the table and sits. Mr. Frank prays. So we have more prayer here. And we have Anne singing. And then we have the group. Around the feast we gather in complete jubilation. Happiest of seas, sun now is here. Many for good reasons, for good cheer. So that must be another prayer. Lots of prayer, lots of singing. End of the act. Curtain falls. Excuse me. So Act 1 is done. Look at that. Poor Anne. She's at her desk. This is before the family goes into hiding. Super sad. All right. Let's get into, I just need to switch over. We'll get into Act 2. And before we get into Act 2, just know that like Act 1, it went to like a more of a present day, not our present day, but when Mr. Frank came back to the annex for the first time after surviving the camps. So we're going to start with that. I think it's ready. Yeah. So Diary of Anne Frank, Act 2. A little background for us. In Act 1, Anne Frank's father visits the attic where his family and 4 others hid from the Nazi during World War II. As he holds his daughter's diary, Anne's offstage voice draws him into the past as the family begin their new life in hiding. As the months drag on, fear, lack of privacy in the attic rooms contribute to increasing tension among the family members. So we thought it was bad before. As the months drag on, it's going to get worse. You can imagine, we've talked about it before. If you have to share a small space with any other 7 people, it's got to be rough, right? Even your best friends are going to get on your nerves after probably a couple weeks. In the darkness, we hear Anne's voice again, reading from the diary. Saturday, 1st of January, 1944. Another new year has begun, and we find ourselves still in our hiding place. We've been here now for 1 year, 5 months, 25 days. Seems that our life is at a standstill. So a little stage direction here. Curtain rises. It's late afternoon. Everyone's bundled up against the cold. So you can imagine they can't run the any kind of heat, any kind of fire during the day. So Anne's voice, we're all a little thinner. The Van Daan's discussions are as violent as ever. Mother still does not understand me, but then I don't understand her either. There's one great change, however, a change in myself. I read somewhere that girls of my age don't feel quite certain of themselves. They become quiet within and begin to think of the miracle that is taking place in their bodies. I think that's what's happening to me is so wonderful. Not only what can be seen, but what is taking place inside. Each time it has happened, I have a feeling that I have a secret, a sweet secret. All right. Miep is coming in. Wake up, everyone. Miep is here. And look at Mr. Dussel. He's disgruntled. He's not happy about anything. So Mr. Crawler is there with them. Brings flowers, books, newspapers, etc. Anne rushes to Miep, throwing her arms affectionately around her. Miep and Mr. Crawler, what a delightful surprise. We came to bring you New Year's greetings. You shouldn't. You should have at least one day to yourselves. She goes quickly to the stove and brings down teacups and tea for all of them. Don't say that. It's so wonderful to see them. Sniffing at Miep's coat. I can smell the wind and the cold on your clothes. There you are. Then to Margaret, feeling her forehead. How are you, Margaret? Feeling any better? I'm all right. We filled her with every kind of pill so she won't cough and make noise. She runs into her room and puts her flowers in the water. Mr. and Mrs. Van Daan come upstairs. Outside, there's a sound of a band playing. Well, hello, Meep. This is Mr. Crowler, giving a bouquet of flowers to Mrs. Van Daan with hope of peace in the new year. Meep, have you seen Moshi? Have you seen him anywhere around? I'm sorry, Peter. I asked everyone in the neighborhood, had they seen a gray cat? They said no. Mrs. Frank gives Meep a cup of tea. Mr. Frank comes up the steps carrying a small cake on a plate. Look what Meep brought for us. A cake. A cake. He pinches Meep's cheeks gaily and hurries up to the cupboard. I'll get some plates. Gaily, that just means happy. Dussel in his room hastily puts a coat on, starts to join to the others. So here's cake. Hey, one thing we should probably talk about too, like with the rations, I think we mentioned it before, but with the rations, like things that make it, you need to make a cake, sugar, butter, milk, it would probably be pretty hard to make a cake. And so they probably had to use quite a few ration books for that. If you remember in Act 1 also, the grocer, like the person who, you didn't have supermarkets back then, but you might go to a grocer, not grocery store, but a grocer, someone who sells things. And remember, he was Jewish and he was taken. So I don't know. They must have found someone else to get their food from because we haven't heard much of it lately. All right, right at the top here, let me share. I almost didn't share. Almost done here. Thank you, Meepia. You should have done it. You must have used all your sugar ration for weeks, giving to Mrs. Van Daan. It's beautiful, isn't it? It's been ages since I even saw a cake. Not since you brought us one last year. Without looking at the cake to Meep. Remember, don't you remember? You gave us one on New Year's Day, just this time last year. I'll never forget it because you said peace 1943 on it. She looks at the cake. Peace in 1944. Well, it has to come sometime, you know. Hello, Mr. Dussel. So obviously right there, it's like kind of realizing like, oh my gosh, a year has gone by already. I was thinking last night too, because it's been 3 years since COVID. Remember this time 3 years ago, it was like a mess. But things like that, I think war, you're probably, hiding in the attic or whatever. It messes with your concept of time, I think. So much has gone on and you're like, whoa, wait a second. That was 3 years ago? So now they're in the same predicament. 1 whole year later, nothing really has changed. Moshi's gone. They're a little thinner. Probably, war's dragging on. All right. Hello, Mr. Dussel. How are you? Bringing plates and knives. Here's a knife, Leafy. Now, how many of us are there? None for me, thank you. Oh, please, you must. I couldn't. Good. That leaves 1, 2, 3, 7 of us. What a jerk. 8. It's the same number as always. It always is. I left Margot out. I take it for granted Margot won't eat any. So I think that right there just shows us like, how selfless Margot is. She's always trying to make things better. Why wouldn't she? So Anne's sticking up for her. I think it won't harm her. All right. I just didn't want her to start coughing again. That's all. And please, Mrs. Frank, she'd cut the cake. What's the difference? It's not Mrs. Frank's cake, is it, Meep? It's for all of us. Mrs. Frank divides things better. So, again, there's so much on the page there, but it's probably saying like the Van Daans, they're a little bit more like selfish. What are you trying to say? Oh, come on. Stop wasting time. Don't I always give everybody exactly the same? Don't I? Forget it, Kirley. No, I want an answer. Don't I? Yes. Everybody gets the same, except Mr. Van Daan always gets a little bit more. Mr. Van Daan advances on Dussel, the knife still in his hand. Things are getting violent. That's a lie. Dussel retreats before the onslaught of the Van Dams. Please. Then to Meep. You see what a little sugar cake does to us? It goes right to our heads. Mr. Van Daan handing Mrs. Frank the knife. Here you are, Mrs. Frank. Thank you. You sure you won't have some? Meep drinking her tea. No, really, I have to go in a minute. Sound of the band fades out in the distance. Peter to Meep. Maybe Moshi went back to our house. They say that cats. Do you ever go over there? I mean, do you suppose you could? I'll try, Peter. First minute I get, I'll try, but I'm afraid him gone a week. With him gone a week. Make up your mind already. Somebody has had a nice big dinner from the cat. So I was joking about it yesterday, but Dussel joking about it right to Peter's face. Yeah, they ate your cat, buddy. Peter's furious, inarticulate, so he can't even like really make words here. He starts towards Dussel as if to hit him. Mr. Frank stops him. Mrs. Frank speaks quickly to ease the situation. This is delicious, Meep. Delicious. Dirk's in luck to get a girl who can bake like this. So Meep is saying, I have to run. Dirk's taking me to a party tonight. How heavenly. Remember now what everyone is wearing and what you have to eat and everything so you can tell us tomorrow. I'll give you a full report. Goodbye, everyone. Just a minute. Something I'd like for you to do for me. So the Van Dans, again, very selfish, right? Pootie, where are you going? What do you want, Pootie? Where are you going? What are you going to do? What's wrong? His sympathy is with his mother. Father says he's going to sell her fur coat. She's crazy about that old fur coat. Is it possible? Is it possible that anyone is so silly as to worry about a fur coat in times like this? It's none of your darn business. If you say one more thing, I'll take you and I mean it. There's a piercing scream from Mrs. Van Daan above. She grabs at the fur coat. It's Mr. Van Daan starting down the stairs with it. No, don't you dare take that. You hear it's mine. My father gave me that. You didn't give it to me. You have no right. Let go of it. You hear? And it's at this point, I don't know. Feel free to chime in. Maybe this is where we'll end, but like that is like her father's, probably no longer around. He gave that to her. So it's more than just a fur coat to her. It's a remembrance of something her father gave her. But I don't know. Pretty sad. Because either way, we know how this ends. Either way, she's going to sell it and get some money for it now. Probably not a lot of money to go around. And if she doesn't, then, when she gets taken to the concentration camp, just Nazis steal it and then they'll have it and sell it. So super sad stuff. I don't know. I was reading something this weekend about somebody going to one of the concentration camps. I think it was Auschwitz, and the biggest one. And they kept one room kind of as it was. It was just, I think it was like glasses, like eyeglasses people wore, just a whole room full of them. So that was just a small reminder of, all the people that died in the camps that wore glasses. It's probably a small percentage of them. And who knows? We know from pictures, Margot wore glasses. Who knows? Maybe her glasses are in the pile of probably tens of thousands. So super sad stuff. All right. On that note, take a few minutes, working class. You don't have to hear my voice for a little while. Take a little break from that. And then we'll get into a little Criers Cross. Hey, it's going to take a couple days, Criers Cross, but I think you're going to really like it because the mystery evolves. You have, I don't want to say too much, but somebody else is going to disappear. Some hints, I think Block A might get to it today. Like maybe they'll disappear. There are definitely some hints of who's going to disappear. And then you got the whole thing. You got Mr. Greenwood, old Mr. Greenwood, the janitor. He disappears whenever students are around. That's kind of weird. Ooh, somebody said, I'm not going to say it. Somebody said something good about what the we thing might be. George, maybe. And then you have the sheriff. There's all the connection there. Eli Greenwood is in Kendall's class. And then you have the father who is the sheriff and maybe like racist. You got him bugging Haitian about it out of all the people in the town. But it is weird. He gets there at the same time. Tiffany disappears. But there are a bunch of people that move, right? There's 4. There's Marlena, Haitian, the parents. And then you have old Mr. Greenwood, who's connected to the dad, the sheriff, because that's the grandfather of Eli. So I don't know. Just keep in mind that. All right. Not for today.